Hello and welcome to Drink Like Sailor. I'm Sailor and we're drinking. And tonight I am actually here with two guests. That's right. Tonight is going to be extra fun. In the house with me are two gentlemen because we are going to talk about a subject that is hopefully going to be so much fun that I needed double help tonight. So, gentlemen, will you please introduce yourselves?
Sure. Yeah, I'll start. My name is Riley Henderson. I run operations for Few Spirits.
Nice to have you here tonight, Riley.
Thanks, Taylor. Happy to be here.
I'm Klafter. I'm the head distiller with Thornton Distilling.
Thanks for being here tonight, Ari. I am really stoked that you guys agreed to be on the show with me, especially for this subject. I loved all of the responses, and I was almost going to try and do an old school call someone on the phone that we both all know very well. Riley, you especially know him well,
Yeah,
and
it
try
can
to
only
do
be
like
one.
an old Jerky Boys thing. But I just couldn't line it up. Would have been hilarious. I probably actually shouldn't have said any of this because I could have done it later and put it in the show. But
That would have been
anyway,
amazing. I think he's
I
on vacation right now too, so that would have been even better.
even funnier. But it was great, all the responses from our group of distillers that wanted to be a part of this. But you guys, tonight we're going to talk about a cocktail slash drink. I hesitate to call it a cocktail, and a song that inspired a generation of fans of a specific type of music. I don't want to give too much away yet. Tonight we are talking about That Funky Monkey, Brass Monkey. You may know the song. If you don't, I don't know where you've been. I don't know what planet you live on. I don't care how old you are. If you're under 21, you shouldn't be listening to this show anyway. So I need you to go to bed and go to sleep, turn the show off. If you're over 21, you should definitely know what I'm talking about, at least the song. So this was released in January of 1987 by the hip hop group the Beastie Boys. It was released as a single from their album Licensed to Ill, which was released a few months prior. And by the way, as an aside, my favorite cover, and we can talk about this later, of this song is by the amazing and great Richard Cheese, who covered it on his studio album Aperitif for Destruction. He is the best. So before we start talking about the song and the band, let's talk about the drink because it was a real drink. Is a real drink. It was a product also. So there was an advertising executive, and he decided to come up with this and name the brand after an alleged World War II spy named H.E. Rasky, who crafted a series of stories about the spy and created an ad campaign using an old photo of his father as Rasky's image. Amazing. So in 1982, the R.J. Reynolds Tobacco Company acquired this brand for $1.4 billion. What? This is insanity. And then somehow Nabisco got it and then sold it to Grand Metropolitan, who merged with Diageo and Guinness in 1997. This is insanity. So it wasn't the only product they had, but still, we're talking about Brass Monkey, right? So the sales and popularity of this Brass Monkey cocktail, of course, increased in the 1980s after the release of the Beastie Boys song, Brass Monkey. Now, in the song, they refer to a drink made in a 40 ounce. And so a lot of people thought there was a 40 ounce Brass Monkey product, which thank God there wasn't, because man, that would have been way worse than what everybody was actually drinking. So later on, Mike D of Beastie Boys was asked about the actual cocktail, and he said, yes, it was the Cubeline, I think it was called, brand cocktail that had been passed around the room while they were probably smoking pot, hanging out, listening to music, and someone was like, man, this is delicious, which they must have been really young. And, they liked the name Brass Monkey and it just kind of stuck. So it went away somewhere in the 90s. They kind of took it off the market. It just wasn't performing well. Super shocking. And then it reemerged in the late 2000s as the Club Brass Monkey, part of the Club Cocktails line, by the Club Distilling Company, owned by Diageo at the time. But it has since been discontinued. Wah, wah, wah. What the hell is it, you ask? Well, I'm sipping on sort of a brass monkey. So the difference guide, which I refer to check classic and specific authentic recipes, I consider that kind of my encyclopedia, says that it should be made 1 ounce vodka, 1 ounce dark rum, 2.5 ounces of orange juice, fresh squeezed is best, and then a half ounce of simple syrup, stirred and served over ice. That does not sound particularly exciting or revolutionary. It also doesn't sound good. So I decided to make it, I don't like rules and I'm not going to drink something gross. So I did make a little one. I tasted it and I'm like, I don't understand why the vodka is in here. This is dumb. I don't need the simple syrup because there's orange juice. So I just made rum and orange juice, basically. That's what I'm drinking. So cheers to the Brass Monkey.
Yeah, cheers. So I did something kind of similar. My wife and I are moving right now, so not everything is on my bar, but I did have some really nice Kohana rum that my buddy makes in Hawaii. So it's like kind of like an agricole style white rum. Then, of course, I had a few bourbon and I had some fresh oranges. And so I figured like the bourbon might have some of those like baking spices and then like a dash of Angostura, kind of covers what the spiced rums bring in.
Yeah.
And then I think agricole is really like a little more interesting. And so I was like, I like that kind of grassy character with the fresh orange juice. I actually kind of like it. It's not too bad.
I'm not sipping on anything at the moment as I kind of just walk through the door. But like you, when I was reading the recipe, I don't understand the mix of dark rum and vodka. It kind of did not resonate with me. It seemed like it would actually be a lot better with a gin, like a citrus forward gin, and maybe like a grassy, high ester agricole rum as well.
Yeah, I was kind of looking at this and thinking, why the vodka? If this drink really, if it starts with this dude's fake story, they were probably trying to figure out how to just bump up the booze in it cheaply, which, I mean, my God, craft rum is pretty cheap too, so I don't know. But vodka just might have been the buzzword they needed to sell it, right? I'm sure at the time. Who knows?
It was the 80s.
I think it was earlier than that, actually. Oh, no, yeah. Yeah, no, it was before that. I think it was somewhere in the 70s that he got the idea and started formulating this. But anyway, yeah, I just went with a nice light rum, a dark rum, and just fresh orange juice. I should have put bitters in it too because it is definitely missing something.
It boosted it a little bit for sure.
Yeah, it needs something,
pepper,
but I was just kind of like, screw it. I mean, I might as well have just made a tropical cocktail. Like it's missing so many things.
Yeah, I think for a Brass Monkey or like even in line with the song, I definitely overdid it,
Yeah.
But like you said, life is short.
Yeah, exactly. So, so the mystery of the Brass Monkey has been solved, which it's funny. I've always wondered, then I'd forget for a few years and not care. I'd be listening to the album. It would come on rotation on my Spotify or something. I'd wonder again. I wouldn't have time to look it up. I could have just looked it up at any time. I just really never did. I also thought it was some 40-ounce drink because there were a lot of those. I grew up, with wine coolers and all kinds of malt liquor barfola things like Strawberry Boone's Farm and I think I thought it was like a Mad Dog 2020. I don't know if you guys are old enough. That stuff was horrific. So I just assumed it was like that with orange juice. But so
yeah, I think we probably tried the same thing with Mickey's in college. the little grenades mixed with a little orange juice or something.
Yeah. Yep. I
Yeah,
used to do that
classy,
too.
classy times.
Oh yeah. That is for Sunday brunch, my friend.
Oh yeah,
So gross.
amazing.
So it was really awesome kind of going back and deep diving into the Beastie Boys again. They're always on some playlist. It's rare that I'll have a playlist that they're not a part of. They're also one of these bands that, because of my age, the first song I actually heard of the Beastie Boys was on the radio, and it was Brass Monkey for some reason. Um, I don't know why that was the first song, but and I thought, the horns were weird and it was funny, and it was it stood out, and I'm like, what is this? And I was deep into metal at the time. So like, but that was also the time you had like Aerosmith and um I'm losing
Run
my words.
DMC.
Thank you. Doing albums together. So I kind of thought maybe it was like that, because there was also like some guitar in some of their songs. And then, you got to fight for your right to party and No Sleep Till Brooklyn. I'm like, oh yeah, these guys are cool. And then just, they absolutely skyrocket. And
What other
then,
stuff were you listening to at the time, Sailor?
I mean, 1986, I was full on Metallica, Megadeth, Slayer. Like that was deep what I was in. That was what I was listening to.
So how did these goofy boys from New York get into your playlist then? Like how did I mean, I think it's the crossover, right? I mean, that's got to be
Yeah,
part of like the
that's
rock
how
and
they.
roll.
That was their That's how they became. Why we're still talking about them. And it was
Yeah.
a great time for that too. I mean, the world was much smaller. Our outlets for music, MTV. That's when their videos. I can remember their videos. So whatever was on rotation on MTV and the radio, there was nowhere else to get music. You go to the record store, and hopefully you had a good record store near you where an older kid knew what they were talking about, and knew good music. And I would also read, Rolling Stone magazine, and what was it, Hit Parader and Circus and all that stuff. Um, I mean, yeah, I think everything was just so much smaller. There wasn't 18 million things being released every day. So,
Yeah.
so License to Ill comes out in 1986. And it is just a mega hit, and it is still one of the best-selling rap albums of all time, still today. Which,
That blows my mind.
same, yeah, I can't believe that it's still, like, it's crazy looking at the statistics of it. Especially back then, I would have never imagined, of all of the artists, if I look at 1986, like the mid '80s, mid to late '80s, I would not have picked them. Probably not until Check Your Head. That's probably when I would have said, or maybe not, maybe even Ill Communication. Maybe then I would have
Yeah.
said, okay, these guys have staying power. But License to Ill, I just thought it was silly, it was fun, it was goofy, it was parody. Their videos were parody. So I just thought they were just parody. I don't know that I thought they were going to be a band with longevity, you know?
But did they, when they came out with this album, I mean, was it clear that it was parody? Because like I started listening to this as a kid and, wasn't in touch with myself enough to like really care about the lyrics as much. I just knew it like felt good and was kind of like got me amped up. But it wasn't until like down the line that I kind of heard them talking about how it was parody, but how it got kind of like carried away as maybe it changed their fan base a little bit too, uh, so yeah, I'm just curious, like at the time, if it felt the same way that it does now.
Oh, there were bands saying much worse shit than that, I can tell you. I mean, I think around the same time, there was a band with a song called She's Only 17 was the hook. I mean,
Oof.
yeah, I mean, look, we can talk about their problematic years all day long, but I think they've done a decent job of apologizing for it and talking about it. And, since, I mean, they were little kids, not to
Yeah.
excuse it, but they really were. And they've grown up and gotten married and have families and have matured as humans. So I think it's absolutely okay to say, we didn't know what we were doing. We didn't know that stuff was hurtful or wrong. And I mean, hopefully we all grow up from that. I mean, I said stupid shit when I was a kid. I didn't
Yeah.
really pay attention to lyrics. And honestly, like, I was too young to know what any of that meant. I didn't know what misogyny was. I didn't know it. I didn't know what,
Right.
I didn't know to be offended as a woman. They had like aged women dancing at their shows. And I was just like, yeah, cool. I was
Yeah.
too young to understand.
We were talking about it a little bit before we started too, about like, you listen to their catalog now over the last, 30 years or so, and like their growth on like every album and their willingness to like kind of change their sounds, but then also just kind of like drop a punk song like in the middle of a rap album, like feels really good. And it's cool to watch that growth. And to hear them even in their own songs like 3 albums later talk about like, I want to not offer nothing but respect and love till the end, like to the women
That
in
was
their
to the
lives.
women.
And
That
then
was
like,
specifically, to the women.
like a call out
Yeah.
to kind of like their younger selves without, denying how powerful that album was, but acknowledging, the things that didn't hold up.
Yeah. Ari, when did you come to the Beastie Boys?
So it would have been a little bit later. I kind of got into them around the Hello Nasty album.
Okay.
Like 2000, 2001. That's kind of when I was first exposed to them. And then I started to explore their discography like after that, after I got really hooked by that album. And, to me, even at that time, that was a very fresh sound. Not knowing some of their earlier stuff, that kind of nasally call and response, punk rock mixed in with hip hop, not relying, like a lot of rap at the time, not using a lot of like cursing, but instead just still being very rebellious, and not taking themselves too seriously. And that's kind of where I got hooked. I'm a Jew from New York, and you have to understand they're a big deal for us.
Yeah, totally.
Like, they're probably the coolest that we've ever, achieved. We kind of peaked around like 35 years ago with the Beastie Boys. So, there's a
Hey,
really
you got
a lot
Adam
of love there.
Sandler. Come
Yeah,
on, you got some stuff. We I should say.
Yeah, so that's when I first got into it, around the Hello Nasty album, Intergalactic, Remote Control, that kind of stuff. Just really, really grabbed me and got me interested in them.
So Intergalactic was a huge breakout hit for them and actually gave them a second life. So License to Ill comes out in 1986. Hello Nasty comes out in 1998. That's a huge time span for a band. And I mean, all of their albums do very, very well and are received well by critics every time they release an album. But that's a whole generation right in between of people that have grown up. Will the new generation like them? I remember specifically where I was in life when that album came out, and the first time I heard the song Intergalactic, I was like, what the fuck is this? And then instantly I was like, oh, it's the Beastie Boys. Those idiots, they did it again. It's like, how did they do? But it was a completely different sound to Check Your Head, to Paul's Boutique, because we can't not talk about Paul's Boutique that comes out in 1989 and is, I think, very different from License to Ill, and also very different to Check Your Head, which is 1992. But Ill Communication with Sabotage, that video, come on. Like, I still think Sabotage is probably one of the best music videos of all time. I know it's always on the list of top 100, whatever. I think it's like of all time. It was just so them too.
And it's such a timeless song. I mean, anytime it comes on, it gets you pumped up. And they're still using it in movies, and commercials.
Yeah.
Like, it's just so iconic.
I had friends this year for Halloween that showed up as the Beastie Boys from the Sabotage video. So not just Beastie
Amazing.
Boys, but from the Sabotage. It was amazing. And I mean, anytime it comes on, like, it doesn't matter where I am. It could be in the supermarket, which I hope they're not playing that in the supermarket yet. I will literally stop what I'm doing and start doing like all the gun moves because you have to. I know all the words still. Can't remember, the grocery list, but I know the words just now. So that's important.
Yeah.
So Hello Nasty, again, fantastic. Body Movin', 3 MCs and 1 DJ. They kill it right after Ill Communication. It's funny because they still think of themselves. I just recently listened to them on Conan O'Brien's podcast. And they're, now there's only 2 of them left, sadly. And they talk about their career in such different ways. They're very, gosh, I hate to say this, but they almost were boring. They're just like 2 old men now that were just like, I think they would have been happier to talk about like, I don't know, their favorite restaurants and like what kind of shirts they buy. Like they were literally grandpa. It was like grandpa speak. And I think Conan was trying to be like, come on, you're the Beastie Boys. And Conan's are already like fired up and they were just not having it.
I mean, you talk about like the most popular album of all time and it's your very first album. Like imagine people wanting to see like the teenage you every time you show up.
That
it
would
makes
be
me
rough.
tired just thinking about it.
Yeah, they talked about that. They actually said when I was researching for this show, they hadn't incorporated the song Brass Monkey into their shows for like 20 years, they said, or more. And they decided they were going to be in Miami. And they said, one of the last times they played Miami, this is the time to pull out that song, let's do it. Let's put it into the rotation. This will be fun. And they did it. They completely fucked it up. They said they didn't remember all of the words. Like it's a total mess, but they said it was so fun and everybody went nuts. They said it was either you could tell people were like, I don't know the song because they were super young, but the older people in the crowd went crazy for it. They just lost their minds and didn't care that they fucked it up.
What do you think the young kids are listening to of the Beastie Boys? Like what album do they go to first?
God, I wish I would have asked some young people. I don't know many young people. I should have. Yeah, unfortunately, my nephews and my niece listen to. I don't even know. Like I ask them regularly and I write it down because I want to talk to them about this in like 10 years. Be like, when you were 13, this was, I'm like, who's your favorite actor? What's your favorite movie? And sometimes they're into telling me. Sometimes they're like, oh, and tell you this again. Yes, you did. I have no idea who any of these people are. They talk about. They don't care about my sister and I listen to similar music. Don't care. Not interested. We have tried so hard. I've paid them money to listen to our music, and they just are like, nah. They take the money and walk away. Nah. They just.
What'd you put your money on? What songs do you remember?
I tried everything. So I tried metal with them, of course. The deal used to be when they were little, I'll drive you to go swimming, but you have to listen to my music on the way. And then you have to remember who sings the song. Or it would be a test. And I'll buy you French fries or some shit like that. And they would remember, but they
for good.
Yeah, I tried. They just didn't care. Then we tried all kinds of stuff from the 90s. And my sister and I would be like, we tried like Salt and Pepper. My sister and I are like dancing to Push It in the car, like, ner, 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 ner. They were just, and they're all like, looking out the window, like, help, get us out of this car.
I feel like that's your responsibility as aunt to be full cringe. You just gotta like lean into it.
I think so. They weren't interested in that. So yeah, everything they listen to sounds like the records, like the music's being cut out all the time. I don't know what that's called. And it's also like all this auto-tune stuff. And it just, I hate to say it, but it's exactly what, my parents or grandparents felt like listening to my music. So, it happens.
Yeah.
But I wonder if, I mean, I'm sure there are plenty of young people into the Beastie Boys because their albums are still selling. They're not still selling to me. Um, I would be curious to know if they would be interested in License to Ill, like Paul Revere and No Sleep Till Brooklyn. Like, it's so raw that, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know. I don't know. It's very punk. It's very punk rocky too. I don't know. I
I
don't
feel
know.
like
And
some of the stuff with like older hip hop that is kind of like hard for me to listen to. And maybe it's just because it doesn't like like hold my attention as much anymore, and that's just a me problem. But it's like that kind of simple cadence where they like punctuate every fifth word, which like is probably like part of what made them so popular because it's like such an easy thing to follow and to like feel like you're a part of it and like every like inch of it as opposed to like somebody that kind of like speed raps, or like moves through something with like a lot of I don't know. I don't want to say artistry because they had a lot of artistry and like I loved how they were as a group, like the way they played off each other was
yeah,
so much fun.
I think that's a good point. The magic of, and actually, I heard that as I was preparing for the show, the way they would like pass it off to all three, all three would pass it off to each other, and to do that in timing. And I've seen them live so many times. I actually saw them live at Lollapalooza in Miami. It must have been 90, right after Ill Communication. It must have been that tour. And it was the dead of summer. So stupid. And they ran out of water. Also stupid. And because it's me, I had a backpack and had my own water because I've always been a grandma. And so we're like, they're on the stage, and I'm like, okay, after them, we're getting the hell out of here because somebody's going to die. So, of course, all my friends were drunk or high or whatever. So it's myself and another girl who's about my height. And I always look for like the biggest guy that's close to the front. And I'm going to stand next to the biggest guy so I'm safe. And so I see this like giant linebacker guy, and I'm starting to feel the crush of the audience. And I'm like, oh, this is going to get really dangerous. I'm like, well, this guy's not going down. So it's starting to happen, the like push. And I'm like, oh gosh, I think this was on the news actually. And so I grab onto him as I realize we're being pushed forward. And so all the security's there. I think we're only like 3 rows from the stage, and security is seeing what's happening, and they start moving the fence towards the stage to give a little more room. And I think they're probably panicking a little bit too. And I'm sure talking to each other about I don't know I'm sure they have a plan for when this stuff happens to like back people up because they're going to crush the people in front. Well, before I know it, this guy lifts me up like all the way over his head, and someone in front of him thinks I'm trying to crowd surf and just passes me forward. And I'm thinking, where are you passing me, dude? There's like no one there. And a security guard grabs me. And I was like, the look on my face, and he puts me down. He's like, you'll be okay. Just stand over here. Well, they can't throw me back in the crowd because people are starting to get crushed. And
Whoa.
so I'm standing on the side of the stage while their Beastie Boys are still playing, and I am horrified. And I finally see my friend like crawl out, and she's okay. And so they said to us, just stay here till the band's done. So we're like, okay. So we got to watch the band right there. They were right next to us. And then they came over afterwards and asked if we were okay. And we were like, yeah, that was really scary. And by the way, they ran out of water like hours ago. So people are just out of their minds. And they were, oh my God. And they were like, well, thank you for staying for the show. And I said, yeah, of course. They were super nice about it. And then we left. But that was my one time. I've
Wow, what a
seen
cool
them
and
so
also
many times.
terrifying experience.
It was very scary. Very scary.
That's
Thank
wild.
God for my linebacker guy whoever you are out there, thanks. I
Yeah.
didn't get trampled. Um, so one album that I want to talk about actually is The Mix-Up, which is an instrumental album, and it won a Grammy for being best pop instrumental album. And I'm like, Jesus, these guys can't go wrong.
So I think that's one of the few albums I don't know that I've heard. I mean, I think I've listened, like, heard a couple songs, but haven't really like sat down with. What do you think? You like it?
I would love for you guys to listen to it later and tell me what you think of it. To me, it would be the most perfect soundtrack to like someone remaking this like 70s the like kind of like a Starsky and Hutch situation, like detective movies in the 70s. That's what it sounds like to me. And I'm thinking, well, first of all, okay, second of all, it won best pop instrument. Like, I don't know if there weren't a lot that year. Not that it's not well done, because of course it is, but I just think it's hilarious that they put out a completely instrumental album. And that's what it feels like soundtracks to movies to me.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't surprise me. Like we were talking about, like listening through their albums, like I don't know if they played their own music on License to Ill or not, but it starts to feel more like they do on the future albums.
They did.
Like they did. Wow.
Yeah, they were a punk band first, and then actually ditched that and went full into rap once they got signed.
Cool. I think I got to see them play at a United Center in Chicago in like 2005, and Talib Kweli opened up for them, which was amazing. And they also had a like a Westminster like dog show kind of thing going on, like even before him.
Yeah.
What?
It was bizarre. But I think that was the first time I saw them play their own instruments. Like I had seen so many music videos, and like it just never really clicked to me that that was part of what they were doing. And then going back now and listening to so many of their albums, like it's so clear, and it just becomes more and more like a part of it almost becomes more of a focus than the rapping does. I don't know if you agree with that or not. Like if like as they get a little older. But yeah, it's interesting.
I think even, License to Ill, the instrumentation, the music is really interesting. It's not just like, simple TS 808 beats that you would hear from that era. Instead, they're sampling Led Zeppelin, they're sampling Black Sabbath. They've got, Harry King on the guitar, just shredding it. It's really, really interesting. And it's great to go back and see, Flair and the Beastie Boys in the same studio together.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah, that's what I love about them. And then at the same time, a year later, you get Hey Ladies, and I'm like, what the fuck is happening? Like, who are these guys?
Yeah.
It's like Jerry Lewis all of a sudden. What is going on here? But that's
Speaking of which, they keep talking about this dance that Jerry Lewis all over that album.
Yeah. I don't know. I think they made it up.
Can you do it, Ari?
I'm not going to try. I'm sure I would fail, even if I could.
I'm going to look it up. I didn't even think about looking that up. Oh, it's a break dance.
Yeah, they mentioned it like 3 times. So it's not just like a passing reference. It's a thing.
Yeah.
The Smurf, the Popeye, and the Jerry Lewis. Yeah, I don't know if this is real or if so Jerry Lewis was breakdancing in 1984. So I don't know what came first. Honestly. Well, he was known for doing the jitterbug. He used to do it on his show. I remember watching that with my grandparents. So that might be what they're talking about. Then maybe he started doing the breakdance because 1984. No, yeah, that predates the album. So it looks like it's a real thing. The more you know. We need that rainbow scene. The more you know.
I think that's why I always clicked with Ad Rock out of the three, a little more, 'cause my dad growing up would just like nonstop be doing like Jerry Lewis impressions, and his voice is so similar. It just always hit me.
Yeah, Ad-Rock's also my favorite. It's like when I think about what the Beastie Boys were, that's what pops in my mind. That like, really energetic nasal voice. And this is before, nasal rappers were a thing. There wasn't really a proof of concept. This was before Be Real and Eminem and Danny Brown. It's kind of like he was the first one to just go all out, unashamed, and be really, really high pitched and nasal. And that's just, what the Beastie Boys were to me.
Yeah, I think that's the magic in them, is that they were so unpolished. I mean, they didn't have a look when they first came out. They didn't, I mean, their sound was just them. It wasn't something that was put together. It wasn't something, it's not like they had great singing voices. It's not like someone put them on the microphone. And I mean, if you listen to Run DMC, for example, or a lot of the counterparts of the time, they have great speaking voices. Like the sound of their voices are nice to listen to. I don't know what the words I'm looking for, but that I don't think that's the case with these three guys from Beastie Boys. But it worked somehow. They work. It's almost like, they're I don't know, they're three parts of one instrument or something like that. Not to get too cheesy with it, but
Well, like that you said, like they didn't find their look yet. Like it's at that album, it was like Adidas tracksuits, like them kind of being a parody a little bit, and then
yeah.
But when they did find their look, it was just like jeans and flannels.
Yeah. They
I
went
love
back.
that.
That's what they looked like in the beginning. And then, yeah, as they moved into, and they did talk about that quite a bit in interviews, that they just were like, we're becoming a parody of ourselves. And they also felt that they had some, big issues with their record label and their producer. Like there's some big shit that went on throughout their career that I think they were able to handle really well. So I think that they were feeling pushed to become a parody of themselves. And so I
Oh,
think
I see.
by owning that, in their kind of taking hold of that and just saying, we can't take ourselves too seriously. Yeah, we'll wear the big giant chains and we'll just take everything to the extreme. You kind of take that away from other people. People can't criticize you on that. They can't criticize you on being ridiculous or being silly or goofy. And if you're good at what you're doing, if your product is great, if at the base of it, it's excellent, let them say whatever they have to say. If you're great musicians and talented, in the end, they got nothing.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, with that popularity, of that first album, they easily could have just chased that and
Oh,
made,
yeah.
I'm sure, a lot of money. But
Yeah.
it was pretty cool that they were able to find their own, I don't know, or keep reinventing themselves.
It's also incredible that, they had all this success with their first album so young, because when that happens a lot of the time, you either rest on your laurels and your second album and your third album are just absolute garbage, or that's when all the infighting starts to happen in a band, and then they're known for that one album, and then it's like, what happened with them? But here we are 40 years later talking about them with this much love and referencing all their different, periods and their transitions and their development.
Yeah, it's unusual. I think it goes down to work ethic, and they've talked about this throughout their years in a lot of interviews I've read, and then listening recently to the podcast episode, just saying that MCA, he just worked up until the day he died, and that's what made him happy. That's what fulfilled him. And they all just sound like they're very hardworking. They're very, very driven and motivated, and the work is what, I don't know, it's their passion, the work. And I think that's the only way you make it in something like that, is that you're passionate about the work. You don't have other motives behind it. Because I think about other bands that have made it that long without drama, and like AC/DC comes to mind. They're another one. They've been together for a million years, and they just are hardworking. They would pump out an album every year. They were on tour forever, 30 something years straight almost, and just very little drama. They just work. I think this is the work we do. We feel lucky to be able to do this work, and we're hard workers and have a very high work. I think that's probably how you make it. I
Yeah.
think seems like if there's ego involved and if there's other reasons behind it, it's hard. Creative people are hard, so
It's hard enough to find that in real life, like on planet Earth, let alone like in that tier with that amount of money and like alcohol and drugs and creative minds, like Firestorm.
Yeah, that shit's got to be so weird. I mean, I think about, especially now at my age, like I've crossed over the big 50, and I look back now and I think about, damn, people that are still around that grew up like that. Thank God I never was interested in like going into something that would I never had a desire to be famous or doing it, because what a weird world, especially now that everything comes out, and the way people get taken down left and right. Like, how bizarre to live a life where, and it's so much worse now, but where you would never know what people want from you or why, like to always be questioning why someone wants a relationship with you or why they're, like everyone's taking, there's a commodity for everybody. I don't know how people stay grounded like that. That would just be so weird.
But you can't live your life without being documented either. Like, I mean, there's
that.
A lot of dumb shit I did as a kid that I'm so happy is not on the internet. People need a chance to grow past themselves.
Yeah, thank God there was no social media when I was a kid, because whoa.
Yeah, I also would not have had the maturity not to engage with that, and say very regrettable things.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. I can
now
think of some.
Now I'm like, this is going to be on the internet forever and ever.
Yes.
I better be very specific about what I want to say,
Yes. I said some real stupid shit when I was like, things that still echo in my mind that like, oh my God, thank God that's not documented somewhere. Like that still to this day bother me that I said it. I was a kid. I didn't know any better. It was stupid, but
right.
Kids are little assholes for a while. Most of them are. I don't know. I feel like kids are so different today, though. They're so much more thoughtful and empathetic and not so quick to just be little dickheads. I don't know.
I've met a lot of little dickheads.
I don't know. Maybe just in different ways.
Not all. Yeah, no. I think it's always a mix. Yeah.
I don't know. I'm Gen X. We couldn't be very empathetic and compassionate because we were too busy raising ourselves and drinking out of hoses and feeding ourselves and, making, we had to have television commercials for our parents, at night. It's 10 o'clock. Do you know where your children are? Now that's some shit right there. So we're a little hard.
So I got to ask you guys, do you think Brass Monkey was a product placement?
No, I don't.
It's such a specific thing to like call out, But I guess it probably wasn't a brand name at the time. It was a cocktail that became an RTD.
It was an RTD. They were drinking it out of a can. I think it was in a can, but it was like low shelf garbage. And it wasn't that they were drinking it all the time, they said. It was passed around the room that time and they thought it was delicious. And like they would drink it if it was around, but it wasn't like they were going out and getting it. But I have a feeling, like reading between the lines and listening to the story, that something might have happened also that day or night where everybody was getting shit-faced on Brass Monkey that made it a little more memorable to them. And there might have been some jokes about the Brass Monkey. It was the Brass Monkey's fault,
Gotcha.
That's just my suspicious mind. but I don't think so. I think they would have said it by now. They don't really hide shit.
Yeah.
I don't think so.
Yeah, I think they just kind of came across it and thought it was just cool and underground and like this, lowbrow liquor that nobody knows about, but it's got a great name.
Yeah.
And it's just an ode to how much they like this thing.
I agree. Yeah, I totally agree.
At first I actually thought it was about the cocktail prop. Well, at first I thought it was about like 40 mixed with orange juice, and then later on, for some reason, I actually thought it was the cocktail proper, which I know is kind of ridiculous. But then I'm like, they actually rap about a lot of like high shelf, wines and liqueurs. They talk about Chateau Neuf de Pape and things like that. So I'm like, of course, it's about a 3-touch cocktail.
Right.
Why wouldn't it? And then later on, I'm like, okay, it's a cheap RTD. That actually tracks much better. That makes more sense.
Yeah, totally. That's funny to think about, actually. Okay, so I have a very important question. If you have to, since you are both makers of the booze, who's got sirens?
That's me. Chicago.
Since you are both makers of the booze, what would you make if I said you have to make a spirit that's going to embody the Beastie Boys? What would it be? Got to be the first thing that comes to your mind. Would it be whiskey, gin, rum? What would it be? And it can't be Manischewitz. Or Brass Monkey.
You're gonna have to edit out my pause here. I'm gonna have to think about that one. That's tough. I guess it kind of depends on like I got to think about like what era of my life and what era of Beastie Boys I'm thinking.
Yeah, like which Beastie Boys? Because there's many.
You know what? I'd go Root Down Amaro.
Ooh, nice. I like that.
It's hard to say because I feel like the thing they talk about most is just, imported German lager and macro lager. So that's not really our category. But
it's a tough one.
I don't know. It could be gin. It could, it's just such a carte blanche and there's so many different ways you can take that category that allows you to be goofy, self-parodying, not taking yourself so seriously, and also have these cool, interesting, jagged edges in a sense. I think it could be gin.
Okay. What kind of gin, though? Are we talking like a London Dry, or are we talking about a botanical, or like?
No, I think something with like sharp citrus character, some sort of like really out there floral aspect. Man, you're putting me on the spot. Definitely not the London Dry.
Okay.
They're doing their own thing.
Yeah,
They're creating their own subcategory that we've never even seen.
Okay, gotcha. Okay. All right. For me, I think about what it felt like in the 80s in New York City, because I was there. What did it feel like around 1986? And I can remember some very specific things. It was very dirty. It was very grimy. But it was also very homey. And people always find this really weird when I tell them it felt like small towns like clumped together. It didn't feel like, at least not to me. I mean, I was mostly in Queens, but it felt homey. I don't know how to describe it. I mean, you knew it was really dangerous, but you still felt safe at home. I don't know. I was a kid too, so it could just be that like fantasy, because you're a kid. But
yeah.
And then I think about like, what was I eating? What was I into? Like what sounds were around me? And it was all about, it was very much about breakdancing. That was everywhere. And everyone had a boom box. So, I would probably honestly go with a malt whiskey, like a light whiskey from back in the day that we don't make that much anymore. So I'd probably go with like a really sweet light malt whiskey that had like some kind of twist to it though. That maybe it was, you know, I don't know, aged in like a very weird barrel of something, you know, just to make it just something, there'd be a weird twist to it. But that's what I would think of as a light malt whiskey. It's like the smell of it, thinking about the smell of malt whiskey feels like it would connect. I don't know.
I wonder about, I think of New York in that time and I think of egg creams. I wonder if people ever add like booze to egg cream. You could do like an egg cream RTD.
So chocolate egg creams is definitely a New York thing. My grandmother was obsessed with them. And we used to go to the specific place and everybody has their thing about it has to be made the specific way. I don't know how the heck you would stabilize that though. I mean, that's for you guys to figure out to make like the real one.
And how do you get the head? Do you have to just like shake the hell out of the can before you open it?
Could you do the little thing in it, like the Guinness?
You could, like the Guinness, like nitro pods. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe you could do that because you need to have that head on it. But what would go in it? Vodka? I don't know. I wouldn't want another flavor in there, I don't think.
I feel like vodka. I mean, I think I'd do an aged spirit. But with chocolate, I mean, is it always chocolate?
Yeah.
Kind of the classic, isn't it?
I think so. Chocolate egg cream. I mean, I guess you could do egg cream with other flavors, but chocolate is the thing for sure.
I mean, I could do some unabashed self-promotion and say a few cold cut. Sure. Little coffee in there. Wouldn't be bad.
Now I don't know. We're changing up the profile of it. I don't know.
If you're trying to keep it neutral egg cream.
I'm pretty hardcore about my chocolate egg creams, man. You can't touch that flavor. So I'm going to add booze to it. Yeah, you just can't touch the flavor. Then it's something else. So if you don't know what a chocolate egg cream is, I will put a recipe in the show notes. The old school recipe that apparently the place I used to go to was there since like the 1920s. It was a Jewish deli that was said to make like the best. And that's where we would always go to get it. So I will pop that in the show notes. Guys, thank you so much for hanging out with me and talking about the Beastie Boys and the Brass Monkey. This was so much fun.
Yeah, this was a lot of fun. So thanks for having us.
Cool.
It was really fun to go down the rabbit hole doing research for the show, and the cocktail, not so much, but that's okay. It needs some improvement, but there's plenty of other tropical cocktails out there. I don't think we can retire the Brass Monkey officially. I don't think it needs to.
Okay with that.
Yeah. So thank you again so much. And to all the listeners out there, we appreciate you tuning in. This was one of my music series, which I would do often, which is a little bit of a throwback to the old Metal, Rock, and Whiskey show for those fans out there. And tune in next time for more Drink Like Sailor. Cheers.
You've been listening to Drink Like Sailor, and we appreciate it. Hope you liked this episode. Please tune in. Hit that subscribe button so you never miss a show. You can find us on Instagram at drink_like sailor and listen to us wherever you get your fine podcasts. You can also read the stuff that I write at sailorwrites.com. We hope to see you next time. Cheers.